America is going through a transformation. I think we're living at one of the most significant times in American history. Implementation of Obamacare will result, in my opinion, of a fundamental change in the relationship between the federal government and the people of this country. Not just those who are on government benefits, but everybody else. Because ultimately, I believe Obamacare will be, depends on how you look at it, a failure, and it will not accomplish what it's intended to accomplish. Obamacare was not health care reform. It was health insurance reform. The big changes came on the insurance side, where the promise was we're going to make sure that everybody has insurance. The sort of the rub out there was that not everybody was getting access to health care, when in fact we know that's simply not true. Everybody in America has access to health care. You go into an emergency room in America, you get health care. I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're a citizen, a non-citizen, you get health care. Why? It's the law. And what will happen, I believe, is, and I think President Obama believes this too, and I'll tell you why, is that the insurance coverage for most people, for society, will not go down dramatically. You'll see a lot of employers, and I've seen anywhere from 20 to 40 to 50% of employers dropping their employer coverage. You obviously would know that better than anybody else, but a lot of folks out there thinking about whether they should just pay the fine and suck it up. For their employees, it's $95. Not a huge incentive to go out if you're 22-year-olds and healthy to go out and buy a $4,000 or $5,000 policy if it's going to charge you $95 if you don't. Or if you sprain your ankle, you simply call your insurance guy and say, I need my policy today, right? Because you can get it whenever you want it. Employers are going to figure out, at first, a lot of particularly the big guys are not going to do anything. They're not going to change because they're going to worry about what the economic impact is them on their human resource department, their ability to keep people. But it will happen with the smaller folks first. They will economically not be able to afford it. Why? Because their mandated benefit coverages are much higher than most small businesses now can do. And plus, you throw in the fact that rates are going to go up 200% potentially, or 100%. It just becomes unaffordable and you pay the fine. And you suffer and you take the consequences of maybe losing some people. But once smaller firms begin to do that, larger firms will say, okay, there's no competitive advantage. I don't really lose anything, and it's economically better off for me to simply drop it. Now, I point out all the things I think are going to happen with Obamacare. Here's the most fundamental. The fundamental is that people are going to now rely on the government in some way for their health insurance. Obamacare is transforming America. Can we turn it back? Will someone say, no, it can't happen, it's going to be set? We'll see. We'll see what the disaster is, how bad it is. We'll see how the 2014 elections turn out. I read an article in one of these publications at my door this morning that, give up on Obamacare, you can't repeal it, forget about it. Baloney. I mean, it's still the most unpopular piece of legislation in the federal government. The American public is still, and once they start to see its impact, it's going to be more against it. The idea that, well, it's passed and Obama's there and that's it. Since when is this America? Since when do the people not have power? Since when do we sort of give up? When we know it's bad, we know it's going to harm people, we know it's going to take power away from people, it's going to destroy the health care system as well as the health insurance system. Since when do we say, well, it's going to happen, give up? If Barack Obama had taken that opinion 3 years ago, 3.5 years ago, he'd have never put forward Obamacare. It was not going to pass. It was very unpopular. He didn't care.
I want to describe the health care plan to you. I want to describe a health care policy that we've actually talked a lot about in Washington. So the bill that I'm telling you about, it's got an individual mandate. So individuals have to buy health care. It requires employers to offer health care insurance to their employees. It tells the federal government it needs to define a standard set of benefits that all insurers have to meet. It doesn't allow for discrimination on pre-existing conditions. It establishes state-based purchasing groups like exchanges, and it subsidizes low-income folks to buy insurance. Now, to all of you, what I just described probably sounds incredibly familiar. You're probably living with it every day, you think. But you're actually not. The bill I'm describing is the Health Equity Access and Reform Act of 1993. That bill was the Senate Republican alternative to Bill Clinton's health care plan. It was sponsored by Bob Dole and 20 other Republican senators, and it then became the basis for the plan Mitt Romney passed in Massachusetts, which in turn became the basis for the plan Democrats passed in 2009. I've always thought one of the great ways to see how much partisanship drives Washington is that, and I genuinely believe it's in the core of my being, if John McCain had been elected president in 2008, and he was facing a Democratic House and a Democratic Senate, I think it is very likely we would have gotten a bill that looked almost the exact same as the one we got. It would just be called McCain Care. It would be a whole different partisan configuration. Democrats would be furious if there's no public option. Republicans would be more supportive because it was their president. A lot of the debates we have about policy, and a lot of the fights we have about policy in Washington, are really about who should win the next election. And the two sides just pick whatever policy arguments they need in order to justify that position. Democrats really like the idea of healthcare exchanges with a public option in the center of them for the under 65 market. They don't want that for the over 65 market. Republicans really like the idea of Obamacare as long as it's being put into Medicare or as long as it's a Republican idea in the mid-90s. So just keep in mind, the place I come from is weird, the Mexican food is terrible, and the healthcare politics are confusing. The Affordable Care Act isn't a perfect bill. I'm going to tell you guys where I stand. I think it is better than nothing. I supported the bill going through, but there's by no question it is not a perfect bill. But it's a bill that you could make work. My concern about it, what I see happening in Washington right now, what I think is actually genuinely kind of scary, is that Republicans don't have and are not going to get in time the power to repeal it. So Democrats won't let them repeal it. Democrats don't have necessarily the power to implement it because they can't get Republicans to release the appropriations money, because so much was left to Republican states. So now the Obama administration is setting up 33 exchanges. They never expected to do that. So Republicans won't let Democrats implement it well. And so rather than having no Affordable Care Act or a good Affordable Care Act, we will have a bad Affordable Care Act. We will have this mixture of kind of gridlock and anger and partisanship in which what goes wrong is kept and what goes right isn't expanded on. And that is a really, really, really bad place for our healthcare system to end up. A couple years ago, Democrats and Republicans basically agreed on the sort of the macro view, the big picture view of healthcare reform. They believed that we should have a universal healthcare system, the government should have some level of involvement in it, everybody should have health care insurance, and we should use that to bring down costs. That agreement has now vanished. Now Democrats believe that and are using the old Republican plan, and Republicans believe, if you look at a lot of their policy, that that the problem in healthcare is cost, not access. That what we need to do is allow for purchasing across state lines, more catastrophic care, more high deductible care, and that the main issue is that we basically have too much government and we need much more bare bones healthcare products in order to bring down costs. Behind that disagreement is Medicare. At the very, very, very core of what the two parties want to do on healthcare, what they think should lead the entire system to a better place is Medicare. And here, and this is a new development in Washington, here, the two parties have developed completely and perfectly opposed visions of what to do on healthcare. But until something changes, we're not going to be doing anything big in Washington because we fundamentally don't agree. We fundamentally don't agree on whether or not we should implement the laws on the books, and we fundamentally don't agree on whether or not we should have Medicare leading the way or Medicare getting out of the way. And until the parties either get enough power to not have to work with the other one, or until something happens in the country that forces them to agreement, we are just going to have more of this kind of gridlock, which, from my perspective, coming here to usually sunny San Diego, where people are actually trying to deal with the healthcare system and live within it, is genuinely a shame.